We are going to make some custom brushes in Illustrator, and specifically brushes that are for technical flats, fashion flats. And the reason why we want to use brushes, or why brushes are so awesome to use for flats, is because it really expedites our work process. Not only that, but if you recall when we made our t-shirt flats and we used individual stroke segments or pen strokes for our top stitching and then just applied the dashed line effect to it, you get this situation here where at some point your stitches get out of line, which they should be like this, perfectly parallel and aligned with each other continuously all the way to the end. And that's what brushes affords you. But mostly it's the time thing. It's a major time saver. So the brushes that we're going to make are these four. We're going to do a double needle top stitch right here. And we're going to make a ribbed pattern for the inset shape of our ribbed neckband that we used for the t-shirt. So it's not in here, but later on when we do clipping masks, we will use that to insert into this shape and give it the appearance of a ribbed knit. The third one we'll do a zigzag stitch, and then we'll also make a zipper. Okay, so brushes, we need our brushes panel. Remember, you can go up to your window menu and find brushes, turn it on, or if you see it in your vertical menu here, it looks like a little can of brushes, right? Boop. So now my brushes panel is open, and the way brushes work is you can use the brush tool. That's hotkey B, just press B to get your brushes tool. And if I click on any one of these in my brushes library, let's say I want this flat fell jean seam right here, I can use the brush tool just like that, and it will create that brush stroke for as long as I want, to draw, right? The other way is to apply it to any other pathway. So I can make a simple pen line like this, and while that pen line's selected, I can just click on the brush and it applies it to that pen stroke. That's going to be the majority of the case when we're working with flats, because the brush is a little irregular and it's freestyle drawing, whereas you have a lot of control with the symmetry and the curvature of your pen strokes. So let's get started. We're gonna begin with this double needle top stitch. Now, it doesn't just have to be stitches that you're using with brushes. It can be pearls, it can be other types of applique beading, anything that you want to make a pattern with. It can be a regular, very consistent pattern or a scattered pattern. You'll see the brush choices when we start making it. And to do the double needle top stitch, we want to be in scale with the stitch that we did for our t-shirt, which means we're going to type in a specific point amount. So I'm going to grab my pen tool, hotkey P, and I'm going to make a line just straight across, and if you want to make sure you're straight across, you hold the shift key down. Doesn't matter what length you do right now, we're going to give it a precise length in a second. So I'm just going to hold shift and then click and let go of shift. And I'll get my selection tool, hotkey V, black arrow. Now, we want to remove our fill. Make sure your fill is removed with black stroke. And we're going to put rounded caps and corners on this. Don't worry about the stroke, wait for a second. And this is our first introduction to the transform panel. We should also have this in our vertical menu when we set up our workspace, but the transform panel icon looks like this. And we can also find it in our control panel up here at the top of our workspace. So with that selected, I can just click on this word transform and you'll see this box pop up. I see X and Y, these first two cells right here stacked on top of each other, that is the position of your pen stroke in your artboard. And we don't really care about that right now, the X and Y axis. We are concerned with this width and height. Not even actually height, really just width for right now. So currently it has a width of 1.1399 inches. The unit is in inches. We want to be in points because that's how we've been working with our stitches previously. And that's totally fine. We don't need to change anything. We just type in PT after our measurement and hit enter. So I have my stroke selected. I'm going to click in the width cell. I'm going to highlight everything and type in 1.5 space PT and then hit enter. Now look how small it got. That is more similar, exactly actually, the width of our previous double needle top stitch that we used, but it also affected the stroke weight. So it scaled it proportionally when we made it so small, which made it really skinny. We're going to bring the weight back up to 0.5. I mean, yes, actually 0.5. So it should look about like that. And if I zoom out, it gets pretty small. Okay, so we need two of these. Doesn't matter how you get them, just make a copy. You can select it, make a copy with Command C and then Command V, or I can do that little quick trick by holding Alt or Option and then selecting the item, dragging it off, and then I can let go of Alt or Option. The spacing between these two, we want like slightly more than if I had another one of these and flipped it vertically. We want just a little bit more space, not that much, a little bit more than the height of that, okay? So that's what I'm aiming for with this stitch. Just a little bit more maybe. How about like that? So that's the spacing you're looking for between the two. And the reason we're doing it this way, so you see all these brushes that are currently preset in our brushes library. The program reads the brush or the pattern that you are using to create the brush. It reads it from left to right or side to side, okay? So even if our stitch were going vertically, we would want to create it reading it like a book, left to right. And so this is what will happen along the pathway. If our pen stroke were going this way, our stitches would happen in that same direction. And that might make a little more sense when we do some of the other brushes. Now there's a thing that we're going to do for each one of these brushes. It's pretty important. It's particularly important for one of them, but we do it for all of them. And this is to create a bounding box around the shape so we can dictate exactly the space we should be using for these two objects. And to do that, we're going to get the rectangle tool, Hotkey M. We want to get rid of our fill and stroke for this. So get rid of everything, no fill, no stroke. And what I'm trying to do with this is I want to make a square or a rectangle that intersects with every single point of these two stitches. And it will tell you when you're hovering over the point, the anchor point. So it's not on the edge of the stitch. The anchor points are somewhere in here. And you can make sure that you're on it by going into your preview mode, your outline mode, which is up here in your view menu. So I can go to outline here and it brings it all to just single lines, really thin pathways. So I can see everything is on point with each other. If they weren't, I would see additional things hanging over the side. But and Command Y will get you back out of that. So Command Y will toggle you back and forth outline and CPU view. But the other thing is that the smart guides pretty much put you right on there. So zooming in is going to make it a lot easier. And I can hover over this area where I think the anchor is and start my box there. And it will tell me where everything else should align. Okay. So there's our bounding box. I'm going to grab my black arrow selection tool, hotkey V, and I'm just going to select that box, right click on him, and send him to the back, which means go to arrange, send him to the back. I'm going to put him in back of our artwork. All right, now we're finished. We're finished with the art that we wanted to create. We've made a bounding box around exactly the pathways. So the program understands exactly what we're using. And now I'm going to select all of this. So I'm just going to drag a marquee box around both of these stitches, right? So now everything is selected, and I'm going to drag it into our brushes panel until I see this blue line appear at the end of this stitch. It doesn't mean that it's going to add it to this stitch, it's just going to add a new stitch to our panel. This box will pop up and you'll see you have some options here: scatter brush, art brush. We want pattern brush down here, which means it's just going to be a very regular repeat. You can explore these when you have some extra time. Both or all of them are great, but they have their purposes. So we want pattern brush for this, for all of them in this case. Now when you get in here, you have some more choices and other things to set up. So I can go ahead and name this. This is my double needle DN top stitch, and I'll put 0.5 point just so I have some information, let myself know. I'm going to keep it at the scale. We were really careful to make the exact scale that we needed already. But because we only have one set of our stitches, when we use this brush, if you can see in this preview right here, there's no space in between our stitches. And that's because we only provided one set. So it's just going to line those stitches up immediately back to back, and it's going to look like a straight line, a solid line. We don't want to do that. So if you recall the spacing between the dashed line we were creating in our stroke panel, we used a 1.5 dash and then a 2-point gap. And that's about 130%. Wait a second. Yes, 130% more. So if we use 130% spacing, let's try that. Hope my math is good. These boxes right here are going to determine what happens when your pathway turns a corner. So it shows you this example right here. It's talking about what happens when you go around this corner like this. What do you want to happen? It gives you some options with this drop down menu, and you can even bring in your own. What happens on the straight, what happens on the inside corner rather than the outside corner, what happens at the very beginning, and what happens at the very end. So you can be very custom with this and very detailed with how your brushes turn out. We don't want to mess with anything like this, with any of the flipping. We're not going to fit it to anything specifically, but we do want to change one of these colorization modes. There are a few in here, a few choices, and they can be a little bit confusing. The one that we want for this, because we have no fill and we're just using stroke, we want to be able to change the color of our stitches to whatever we want. So we're going to choose tints for this. If you have a second later and you want to learn more about the other colorization methods, just hit this little light bulb and you'll see this come up. It'll explain. Our key color is black. That's what our stroke, that's what our stitches are in. So that's what it will change when it sees anything black. So if I go to my stroke later and change the color, it will change whatever the key color is set to, that's what will change. So I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to zoom out for a second, and I'm going to get my pen tool. I'm going to make a line like this, and then just click on one of these, or the last one that I did actually. So now you can see when I apply this double needle brush, it's perfectly in line with each other. Each stitch is right on top of each other, exactly how it would look, how the machines do it. So that's perfect. That's what I like. That's what I want. So I'll keep it there. Now, to give you an example of what happens with the colorization method that we chose, if I double click on this stroke now and choose a color, I can change this stitch color to anything that I want. And maybe this comes in handy later, but usually a tech flat is in just black and white. So later on when you get into line sheets and other things, you might use a colored version. The next one, so we already have our double needle top stitch. Let's go into this rib knit. It's pretty easy. I'm going to get my pen tool right here, and I'm not going to be as long as the exact dimensions we have of this rib, because we're going to curve it later, and that will make more sense, but I just want enough space. So I'm going to make a straight vertical line perfectly on the y-axis. I'm going to hold shift so I know I'm on that axis. I'm going to make it about this long, let's say. Oops, change my stroke back to black. And I'm going to make sure I have rounded cap and corner. I'll bring it down to 0.5. No fill in this, that's good. And for this one, because we are just going to use this singular pen stroke to create this brush, I'm not going to do a bounding box on this one. I'm just going to simply drag it into my brushes panel until I see that blue line. I'll choose pattern brush again, and this is going to be my rib knit. Spacing. Now the spacing is going to be key here. The program understands that we have a singular line, but I have 0 spacing. So now it's going to just look like this big old line with those rib knit back to back, giving it a solid appearance. Let's try, first off, let's try 500% spacing, and that's pretty good. Let's go maybe up to 700. Yeah, I think that will read a little better. If they end up too close to one another, it gets really muddy and sort of looks just like hatched gray texture. So I think that should work nicely. 700%. You can do the tints again for the colorization if you want to be able to change that to a different color later, and I'll hit OK. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, get my pen tool, create some random pen stroke, and apply that rib. Yeah, perfect. I love it. Great, done. So I'll hit delete on that. Let's move on to the zigzag stitch. Now this one is very particular. If we do not use the bounding box for this, this is what happens. Let me zoom in here. The program does not understand to put these two ends right on top of each other. So that's what the bounding box does for us. It will make this be right on top of the other one when it continues in its pattern. So let's begin making this. The pen tool is what we need. I'm going to, first of all, get rid of this other art in my way. So the pen tool, I'm going to make a V that if I have a reference to my t-shirt flat, it's a good way to decide the size of your zigzag. Um, so I'm gonna do about like a 30-degree angle. It's not exactly 45, but something like this. And I'm going to change the weight down to 0.5. I want to keep my fill, no fill. Make sure I have rounded cap and corner on, good. And now I want to flip this to the other side. So I need to select it with my black arrow. I'll grab my reflection tool, that's hotkey O. And then I'm going to use this anchor point because what you are able to do when you hold Alt or Option when you're using the reflection tool, it's asking you to choose a reference point to flip from. And we want to flip it from this point right here. So the other side just flips right back up opposite. So I'm going to hold Alt or Option, click on this bottom anchor point, and then I'm going to accept the vertical copy. And we should have something that looks like this. We need to join these two paths real quick. So I'll take my white arrow, the direct selection tool, hotkey A. I'll drag a marquee box selection over this bottom pair of anchor points, right click on them, average, both directions. I'll right click on them again, join, and now that has become one. So here's the part where it becomes very important. We create a bounding box. I will grab my my rectangle tool, hotkey M. I'm going to get rid of my stroke this time. And I'm going to do the same exact thing. Remember, when you zoom in really close, it allows you a little more concise control. So I can hover right over this anchor point and start dragging out this. And it seems like right there and there. Remember to double check. You go to your outline preview, that's Command Y, and I can see it's hitting on every edge and every point. So going back to your CPU, and last thing, I want to send this bounding box to the back. So I'll right click on just the bounding box, go down to arrange and send to back. Perfect, we're done. So I'm going to select everything now. I'm going to drag it into my brushes panel, choose pattern brush. And we don't need any spacing here. We're going to keep the scale, and I'm going to apply that same tints. Color key, color, black, so it knows to change whatever is black to whatever color you want. So I'll zoom out here and test this out. This time I'll get my brush tool, hotkey B. And I need to select this first. And you should zoom in here and make sure there's no differentiation between the V's. So these are matching up perfectly. That's exactly what I want. Okay, great. And just so you know, these are all scalable too. They're fully scalable, so you can pretty much make whatever size, but as long as you're close to what you want your stroke weight to be, you should be good. All right, let's do this last one. Last one is zipper. Okay, let's grab the rectangle tool, it's hotkey M, and I want to be really precise with this rectangle that I make, so I'm going to get my precision dialog box just by clicking in the artboard once, and you'll see this box pop up. The width that I want to use is 0.02. 0.02, great. And the height, I'm going to do 0.08 and hit OK. Should look something like this, except I don't want this 1 point stroke weight on here. I'm going to bring it all the way down to 0.5. I'm actually going to fill this with white this time. So I can hit that little tiny icon with my default colors, or I can hit D on the keyboard, but I do need to change that back to 0.5 stroke weight because it changed it when I did that. Okay, great. So I'll grab my selection tool now, the black arrow, hotkey V, and I'm going to make a copy of this. So I'll hold Alt or Option while I drag another one off. So there's our next tooth in our zipper teeth lineup. And so remember me talking about how the program understands the way it reads your artwork to create a brush is from left to right. So when we create a zipper, it's going to be vertical for the most part, right? Most of them. And even though it will end up vertically, that just depends on the pen stroke or pathway that we create with whatever tool we use. But the brush itself needs to be created in this sideways direction. All right, I'm going to grab my black arrow again, and I'm going to try to line these up so this edge is right on top of each other. And I want only part of my zippers to be overlapping. Maybe not quite half, a little bit less than half, if you consider how zippers overlock with one another. Let's try that. And we're going to do the same thing with the bounding box now. So I'll grab my rectangle tool, hotkey M. I'm going to get rid of my stroke and my fill. And this time include both pieces of your artwork and drag a bounding box around it, hitting the furthest most anchor points that you have. So I'll go to my outline view, Command Y, and make sure everything's perfectly on top of one another. Yep, great, great, great. Okay, Command Y to get back out of that. I can see that I need to change these to rounded, and this could stay squared, sort of preferential. But before I do that, I'm going to send this bounding box to the back with my black arrow, my selection tool, hotkey V, right click on him, arrange, send to back. Now I can better access these two pieces. Let me see what the rounded cap and corner look like. Yeah, I think I'll do that. That looks better to me than those really harsh corners. All right, now that we have that all set up, we've got white fill in both of these. We have our bounding box that perfectly matches the outermost anchor points. And we have our rounded cap and corner, 0.5 stroke. I'm going to select everything, drag them into the brushes panel, choose pattern brush, okay. And we don't want to change anything here. I can name it. I'll say zipper, boop. No spacing, no scaling. You can mess with this later if you want. And this time the colorization method I want to choose is hue shift. And we will need to change the key color here because it is that white fill of each of these little zipper teeth that we made that we want to change eventually. So what I'm going to do is take this little dropper tool, go in this preview, and click around until I get the white portion of this zipper. So there we go. And I'm going to hit OK. And now when I test this out, I should be able to go not to my fill color, but strangely, it's the stroke that you go to be able to change this. Oh, select it first. So any metallic effect that you want to try to achieve can be done with this color. So you either have like a nickel metallic color, or you can even do something a little more bronzy like a jean zipper. And yep, that is how you use the hue shift colorization method. So same as always, delete the ones that you don't want in your new saved library, like maybe I don't want this or this, and I'll hit the little trash can. And then I would say save brushes by going to that little book icon, choose the name, Tech Flat Brushes, keep it in this folder, don't change anything. This will save it to your presets in the program. Then hit save, and then you should be able to access your user-defined Tech Flat brushes, okay?